Welcome to today's lesson. From today's standards of expressions and equations, we'll be talking about learning target 1, which is I can write verbal expressions for algebraic expressions and algebraic expressions for verbal expressions. So kind of just flipping one from the other and vice versa. Okay, but we have some vocabulary that we need to talk about before we get there. So the first word is variable. So variable is a letter used to represent numbers or values that are unknown. Okay, so some examples of that would be like X, Y, A, B. You could really use a lot of the letters in the alphabet. There are some that you should not use. Okay, those would be the letter O, because it looks like 0. The letter E, because it actually stands for a number called Euler's number. And the letter I, which we use for imaginary numbers. So if you would, stay away from using those because they're used for something else. Now you can use some other letters that look like other symbols. So like we'll still use the letter T, which kind of looks like a plus sign, I get. We'll use the letter L, but when I write an L, I kind of make it cursive, even though it kind of looks like a 1. So there's some things to get around using those. Those are not as frequent. Like X is the most used one, but we still use like T and L and other letters to represent things. So just so you have that in your mind. Our next vocab word is algebraic expression. So here, that is consists of sums and or products of numbers and variables. Okay, so here, an example of an algebraic expression would be like 5.4m, or the expression of 3x minus 4c. Okay, so notice that like the 3x, the 4c, the 5.4 are all multiplied to a variable. So that's what makes them connected by a product. And then sometimes you can have it like 5.4m doesn't have anything added or subtracted to it. 3x and 4c are connected by subtraction. Now here another thing to note, let's put this in orange, is that the sign of minus can also be represented as plus minus. Okay, so these two things are the same. Okay, so minus sign is the same thing as plus and negative. That's something to keep in mind. Keep in the back of your mind because you're going to see that several times, especially when we do order of operations later in this unit. Okay, so moving on. So the next word is a term. So term is a part of an expression that can be a number variable or product quotient of a number slash variable. Okay, so that one's pretty broad, has a lot of things going on, but let's break down the ones that we already had. So if you look back at 5.4m and the 3x minus 4c, 5.4m, that is a term. Okay, just stand alone by itself. 3x, that by itself is a term. Now, negative 4c is also a term. Notice that I included the negative sign with that, or the minus sign, because it's always going to attach to the term behind it to stay together. So that's where this plus and negative thing comes in. The plus is something that is not attached to anything and separates terms with each other. So I can rewrite this to be 3x plus a negative 4c, so that negative goes with the 4c and not with the 3x. Okay? Now, to kind of incorporate the quotient idea, these were all like products. So let's say if I had another algebraic expression that was 8 minus t divided by 2. 8 would be a term. Even if it didn't have a variable attached to it, it's just a number, so it can be a term by itself. And then the negative t divided by 2 is also a term. Okay? So those two things are separate. Once again, that negative goes with the t divided by 2. So a t divided by 2 can be an expression on or term on its own. The next term or like vocab word is going to be exponent slash power. Those two words are interchangeable in math for what we're talking about. So the definition of this is the small number that is attached to a base. Okay, and what we mean by this is like, this is how we use the power of to represent some things. So let's say 2 to the power of 8 would be like 2/8, or 2 to the 8th power. That's just another way of saying it. Let's finish that real quick. Okay, so let's say that I have x cubed, or x to the 3rd power, or x to the power of 3. There's different ways of saying it. So the 3 is the exponent, or power. The x is actually the base. Okay, so more of a like mathematical definition is that the 3 is representing, or the exponent is representing, how many of the base you have multiplied together. So in this case, it's saying that you have 3 x's multiplied to one another. So really you could rewrite this and say x times x times x. Okay? That's another way of and so using an exponent or power is another way of shortening it, so it's easier to write. Because if we said let's have 2 to the 100th power, that would be a lot of 2's, 100 to be exact. So you wouldn't want to have to write that. I wouldn't want to make you write that. So that's kind of why we have it separate like that. Okay? So last word, verbal or vocab word, is verbal expression. So here it is a written out version of an algebraic expression using words okay, something to help you with this is note, use math into words sheet that we gave you in your packet pickup. So just keep that in mind. You want to do that because we're going to use do a, like with your Desmo card sort, that's what you're going to have to write on. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So some examples of that would be like if I gave you the algebraic expression of v plus 2, then writing it out in verbal would be a number v plus 2. Oops, my bad. Got to use the words. Okay, so this is verbal. This one's algebraic. Okay, so notice the difference. One's shorter than the other, but one uses the words and describes what the algebraic expression is saying. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to our examples. So here, for the first learning target, we want to be able to write verbal expressions as algebraic and algebraic expressions as verbal. So this is the first part. So we're going to take these algebraic expressions and write them as verbal expressions instead. Okay, so here x plus 4. So and any time there's a variable, we say the number and then say the letter. So the number x, and then you can use, this is where the math sheet comes in, or math into words sheet comes in. So I could use plus, I could use more than, I could use increased by, but I'm sure most of you will take the short, easy way and say plus. You could also say added to, stuff like that, okay? But there are I'm just trying to show you that there are multiple ways of writing the same thing. So there are multiple correct answers when we're doing these, okay? Next one. So here I have 3m minus 5. So now 3m is being multiplied to m, so I need some word to represent that multiplication. Okay, so 3 multiplied by a number m minus 5. Okay, you could have said the product of 3 and a number m minus 5. You could have said 3 times a number m, or you could have said, I guess, 5 taken away from or subtracted from 3 times a number m. Like, there's different ways. Remember that with minus signs, you'll have to switch the order based on what you're using. So like less than, subtracted from, take it away from, those kind of things need to switch order in your sentences for it to make sense mathematically. Okay, next one. So I have 7t with a division sign and 9. So here let's say the product of 7 and a number t divided by 9. Okay, and that would be a great sentence. There's different ways of writing this one too. You could say the quantity of 7 times a number t divided by 9. That division sign kind of stunts the creativity on this one, but that's okay. Sometimes that just happens. Here, let's say the quantity of of 8 times a number a squared subtracted from three. Okay. And so there's different ways of saying the multiplication part. A squared, you could have said a to the second power or a to the power of 2. Squared is like the short, easy way for that one. Remember that 2 is squared, 3 is cubed, but then after that there's no shorthand for like like exponents of 4 and above, which is unfortunate. It would be nice if there was, but there's not. Okay. Let's move on to the other side of that coin. So here we want to write algebraic expressions for each verbal expression. So here, these will be a little easier to write, but we do have to do a little bit more work of identifying the sign and symbols they are. So we want to notate, like, I see there's a T, and I see there's the number 6. And then we got to use our math into words to represent what sign this is. So like, or what symbol I should use. So more than would be plus. So when I put this together, I would see T plus 6. Okay, and that would be my answer. Example 2, I see that there's a 10. Less than would suggest that there's minus sign here. And then F would be my letter F. But this would also tell me to switch. Okay, because of the words less than. So then I would come up with F minus 10. Okay. Oh, another word that you could use for multiplication, if you remember, is of. Okay. 2/3 is just a word that we would use for a fraction. So it's like 2 divided by 3. And then your letter V. So really, our answer here would be 2/3 times V. Okay. Example 4, a number x to the power of 6. So x obviously would be x. Here it says to the power of, so that would be an exponent. And then the number 6. So here it's telling me that I should put 6 as the exponent of x. And that would be my answer. Okay. And now example 5 is putting multiple things together instead of just one operation. So there's a little bit more to identify. So here I have a 2. Here it's multiplication. So there's a times sign there. A number m. I see the word plus, so I have a plus sign. Now here, if I see the words quantity of, that means I'm going to put something in parentheses. And then the number of n and 20. Now, one thing that's tricky, not always seen, if you use the quantity of and something with an and in the middle, that would be a plus sign. I kind of used it earlier to represent multiplication, but I didn't use the word and. I said the quantity of, and then I said this multiplied by this. So if you're going to use the word and, you're going to be implying that you're using addition and not anything else. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So now let's put all this together. Now usually this goes in order unless you have something that switches the order, like the subtraction. Okay, so I have 2 times an m, then plus the quantity, so the next stuff should be in parentheses together, and so the next stuff that I saw is going to be the n plus 20, so I put that there. and then that would be my answer. So I should have 2n plus with a parenthesis, n plus 20, right parenthesis. Okay? And that's the lesson. Okay? Have fun.